right, I want to go over chapter 11 today and then chapter 12 on Thursday. That'll complete the book. All right, and again, I plan on, as soon as I can, redoing all the lectures from chapters 1 through 12, and I will do the best I can to make the site look like the author's site. I will tell you, it won't happen this weekend because my niece is getting married in Milwaukee, so that's going to take up a lot of my time between that and my daughter's coming down from St. Louis to go to that wedding. So, all right, so again, that's this week, and then the rest of the semester I'm not going to write it anymore because that's going to be for you to work on the project. In the other class, because I know at least one person in here is just in these two classes, but it's lab all week in the 10 o'clock till 12 o'clock class, the ASP.NET. It's lab all week in Java. All right, what I'm going to do during Java today is I'm going to be grading your first assignments. Okay, some of them I've got graded already, but I don't have any idea. I didn't bring the grade book home with me, so I wrote it down on a piece of paper what the grades were, and I didn't save it. All right, so I'm probably going to end up just looking at most of those again. All right, because I save it online, but for some reason I didn't. I looked for it this morning and couldn't find it. So, but today in the excuse me, in the PHP class, it'll be lab today, and then we're going to go over chapters 8 and 9 on Thursday. Whatever we don't finish, we'll finish up a week from today, and at that time you'll get your second assignment, and then you will get, again, 3 straight lab periods to work on it. What that means is, at the end of that, the only thing we'll have left in PHP will be chapters 12 and 13. Chapter 12 is on databases. Chapter 13, the author does a little project, so we're going to go over the project, but we're going to do more on databases. I'm going to give you a kind of a small assignment on that, and then for the rest of the semester, we're going to work on a project, a small e-commerce site as a class. All right. So just so you have some kind of an idea of where we are, where we're going, etc. with that stuff. All right, so I'm on page 317, chapter 11, as it says, creating attractive design. And attractive design working with templates. And if I move all the way up about 30 pages or so to the end of the chapter, one of the things that the author mentions on here, that wasn't very good, is he does give you some places where you can go if you want to go and find different templates. All right, and as he says, good starting places are www.joomla24.com, www.bestofjoomla.com, www.cmslounge.com, and there's other ones that you can see also. And I know the last time that I went and literally went in and Googled free Joomla templates, all right, 27,300,000 hits. All right, here's Joomla 24, which is one of the ones that they reference, more than 4,000 free Joomla templates. All right. So my hope is, I'm not that concerned with you creating a new one for this Corba site. All right. But the question got asked this morning, it wasn't exactly asked like this, but Kelly had brought this up. But I want to make sure people do understand this. I want you to, whatever you got right now for your database, the one that you're working on for Corba, I want you to keep working on that one. When you get it done and you're ready for me to grade it, just let me know. All right, but then what I would do would be a brand new fresh install of Joomla, even if you keep the original one that you did. All right, just do a new one and don't put any sample data in it and start working on that as far as your project goes. All right, that's the way that I would do it. I mean, hopefully by now you're thinking about what you want to do the site on, how many pages it's going to have, what the pages are going to look like, or what kind of a template seems like it would make sense for this site, etc. I'm hoping that you do choose a different template. Yeah, something hopefully that'll be reminiscent of what the site's about. I mean, if last semester, you guys were talking about Steve, and Steve was, when he did his website for the 164 class, it was Hell Sells Guns. A little scary, but it was a site on selling guns. And I think he said something that his dad did have something like that where he did sell stuff, and he was going to help, basically use it for that. Well, the reason I'm telling you that is he had a very different backdrop for his site than most people would have. He found a fairly camouflaged looking site and then did a lot of work on it to try to fix it to make it look the way he wanted it to look. All right, so what I'm saying is that that's kind of a maybe a peculiar case, but hopefully that if you're going to do something, let's say you're going to do something on Packers, all right, then hopefully you'd find some kind of a template that would be the green and gold theme or whatever, or you'd create your own. And one thing they talk about in this chapter too is that even if you do that, that although some of the stuff that goes into a template, of course, is PHP, which you probably wouldn't want to monkey with that, at least not too much, that virtually all of these templates also come with HTML and CSS files, which you should, feel free. If you're going to do that, if you download a template, I would make copies of any file that you're going to change before you change it. I mean, you can always go back down and redo the copy, all right, or, just re-download it or whatever. But the problem is, what I hate to see happen is somebody to sit there and get a whole bunch of stuff done and then have it be screwed up. All right, again, that kind of stuff has happened before. And I've said this before, I guess, Amanda, this is more for you, but I want to make sure everybody hears this again. Remember that if you're working on the virtual desktop, it is a desktop. So if for some reason it goes to hell someday, you try to get on and you can't, it doesn't happen often. It didn't happen last year, but it happened the year before, where I had a student, he came in one day and his desktop was just gone, basically. And he hadn't backed anything up, so he lost his whole semester's worth of stuff. So what you really should be doing is backing up stuff, keeping it on the flash drive, keeping it on your H drive, keeping it someplace. All right, especially for the PHP stuff. All right. All right, so that said, again, you can see they talk about in here, basically it's about changing a template. The first thing they do is they go in and they talk about some of the other default templates that are in here. Good news or bad news, depending on your point of view, there's only one or two other default templates that are actually in here. All right, as far as what's actually in there on the system when you go and look at the template manager. There are two of them. There's that, what is it, Beezus or whatever it is, and then the ProStar we've been using. And there's the ISIS, I think it is, for the administrative end, and there's another one you can use on the administrative end also. They'll talk about those, but not very much. Notice also it's possible to apply different templates to different pages. The only thing that you really have to watch out for if you're doing that is if you decide, wow, look, I've got these 8 different templates and my site's got 8 pages. Each page is going to have its own template. That's probably going to look pretty ugly. All right. Now, you may or may not agree with that, and it might be that there are things in common with each one, and you go and you morph and you play with the CSS and the HTML where it does look nice together. I'm not saying it's impossible. Downloading and installing third-party templates, that's a little bit of what I talked about. And then finally, customizing templates, tweaking the CSS and the HTML. All right, so again, the Joomla template is the set of files that contain the HTML and the CS code defining what the website will look like. It also, again, has PHP files in it. At least a PHP file, but usually several PHP files. So they show here, turning up to page 318, kind of a look with a template and a look without a template. In some ways, at least, it's reminiscent to a file with no CSS and a file with CSS. Not exactly, but it's very similar, and you get the kind of idea that they're talking about. All right, so even in this case, even with no template, you get something. Okay, it's very vanilla, it's very generic looking. It doesn't look very professional with the links like this, etc. But it works and it's functional. All right, so when we talk about the days of things like progressive enhancement and graceful degradation, again, those are two terms that you should be familiar with. So if you're not, then shame on your instructor for not doing a better job of going over them with you. But when you're talking about graceful degradation, what you're doing is when you create a site, you assume that the person using your site has everything they need. All right, and so you build it for that. In fact, one of the things that's kind of in vogue today is when you start to build a site, you build it and it's called mobile or mobile first. You build it for the mobile environment first, and then you let it degrade down so if people don't have this and they don't have that, it still shows. This would be almost basically, using something like that. That if somebody didn't have something available, at least something would show. So when you've got progressive enhancement, you start with nothing. You assume they have nothing and you build up. So if they have JavaScript turned off, for example, you would at least show them some CSS and something. if they have JavaScript and for some reason I don't know why they wouldn't have CSS, but you can at least give them something where they could iterate their way around the site. All right. So when it gracefully degrades, it starts from the top and it works its way down. With progressive enhancement, it starts its way on the bottom and it works its way up. All right. And if I didn't do a good enough job of explaining that to you, if you just go out to Wikipedia or whatever and type them both in, they'll say what I said, but maybe in better English. All right. So again, as mentioned, actually a template contains more than just the pure HTML and CSS. Joomla has to know how to place stuff, you know, what positions on the screen, etc., that you want to place it, and that's where the PHP stuff comes in. All right. Now, again, you know, realize this is the author. The author's got a bias. You know, the author wants you to use this product. The author thinks this is an easy-to-use product, and he's done a pretty good job, I think at least, over the first 300-plus pages of this book of explaining to you what you need to do in order to be able to learn this and to use it successfully and effectively. So he says artsy, basic, flashy, grungy, playful, etc. Whatever your taste in templates, you're likely to find one that meets your needs, and that's true. You're also likely to find one that's free that meets your needs. All right. Now, it may not be perfect. So he gives you some examples in here, and again, I'm not going to go through these, but he also says if you're interested in taking a look at these and maybe even modifying something like these for your own benefit, he shows you where those sites are. All right. And again, these are other places that you can go to. Joomla Shine I've been out to before, but it's been a while. All right. So as it says, it isn't hard to find excellent and oftentimes free templates on the web at the end of this chapter, and that's what I already showed you on 347 and a little bit on 348. They mentioned that to you. It says first we will have a look at the templates that come with Joomla. You'll activate one of the templates that ship with Joomla, and you'll download and customize a new one for the web. You may or may not remember this, but we did something similar to this very early on in the semester. All right, and what I mean is what the author had you do very early in the book was to go in, as they say there, and we'll look at this in a minute, going into the template manager under extensions template manager, and you found that by default ProStar was the one that was set up. And if you just go and instead of having that one be the one that's set up, and you can tell what's set up because it's the one with the orange here, if you just check the Bees 3 default, for example, just do that and do nothing else, save and close, and go back and bring up your front end again, you'll notice a marked difference as far as the way that it looks. So that's really what he has you do first. And then he mentions again, too, that there is another default. The default, again, is ISIS for the back end, but there's another one that you can use on there, too. What ends up happening when you do this is you go out to your site in question and you download, just like we looked at in the last chapter, you get the zip files, you download those zip files, and it should add things under your template manager when you go in and do this. So if we switch back over to here, all right, and again, I'm just taking a look at the code that they're showing or the examples that they're showing in the book here. So it says here, navigate over to extensions, template manager, and there it is. Now you know what the site looks like. It's right here. Again, I haven't done much with mine in the last couple weeks, but you know what it looks like. So when you come back over to here, right now you can see that it's that ProStar copy, the one that we made much earlier. So again, if I come in here and just change it to Bees 3 default, all right. So if I just come in here now, it should have set that as the new default. So again, and if I come in here and notice default style successfully sent, or set rather, and I've got ISIS, if I reset that over to here, to Hathor, or however you pronounce it, you can already see how different that looks. All right, if you're like, oh my God, that's terrible, just go back in and change it then. All right. Probably if you'd have done the other one first and then looked at the new one, you might think that's terrible. All right, so I can just go back and change it fairly simplistically. All right, so if I do come through here now, and I don't know if I have to save or not, to be honest with you, but let's go in here and let's just refresh and see what happens. All right. So hopefully you notice that the stuff, well, such as, notice we've got the stuff at the top. This right here, they talk about an add-on later on in the chapter that'll automatically put drop-downs in there for you. Of course, it'll only work if you have some content to be used for drop-downs, and they talk about creating some dummy content. But hopefully you notice it looks a lot different. Notice that the stuff that was over in position 7 is now in position 3, etc. Again, you might like the way it looks better now. You might like the way it looked better earlier. And this is a lot of what happens. When you go out to the template manager, when you go out and download new templates, you should just have additional listings there under your template manager. All right, and you can go in and add a new one. All right, and it's fairly easy to do. Again, some of that stuff that you do is going to require, depending on what it is, that you either pay or you register. All right, and you know, I'm to the point where I register for so much junk online that usually I go and save what the legal thing is, and sometimes I go back and read it, but after a while they all pretty much sound the same, and that's kind of what they're hoping for. All right, is that most people aren't going to read those. All right. So starting on the bottom here, again, they talk about template styles. Okay. Notice a template style is a variation that you create on an existing template. So in other words, you can do some styling on an original template, and they will talk about that in the chapter here. All right. Now notice too, I annotate stuff in my book that I think is important. You may or may not agree with this, but if you do look here on page 321, in particular at this little aside that they put right here, the author says in the style screen the word default is used in two different meanings. All right, in the top button bar, the make default works as you would expect. It allows you to make the selected default, all right, the one that's on your front end or back end. It says, however, notice that there are also templates named default for ProStar and for Bees 3. In this case, it says default means that the template uses its normal settings. All right, so what does that mean? Well, remember, one of the first things that we did, okay, was we went in, and when we were working with ProStar, we changed it and we made a copy that was called ProStar Copy, and that's the one that we've been working with. All right, and as soon as we clicked that orange star by there, or clicked in that area, so we had the orange star, that became our default. That's the second one that they're talking about there. All right, then we started making all sorts of changes to it as we were working on it. But again, when we come back over here, and I come back over here, and hopefully this is going to work okay, because I did not look at this one before. All right, but let's see. Yeah, I know we want ISIS. Okay, but that's not what we want. I literally want to be able to go back, and I want that to be my default. And they're probably, there we go. All right, so back to ISIS. And notice now, though, how it changed back. But if I come back over here, and I go back to ProStar Copy, fine. But if I go back to the original ProStar, which is the one that we made the copy from originally, right there, and I go back and again look at the site, all right, it looks similar to what we had before, but it doesn't look identical, because we made a bunch of changes, and we've been making changes throughout the book based on the copy that we've been using. All right, and I think that's what the author is trying to get across to you here. All right, so I just went through and did this. Okay. And again, they run through it as the author has done several times in here. He goes through some of the options that are in here, some of the stuff that you can do. So he talks about coming in next and changing the site color. All right, so I'll go back and reset it to the default, but what the point is, when we get all done, what should happen is, I think that on one of the pages here, what he talks about is that you're going to have a red background. All right, so if we run through these steps here, notice what he says. Again, navigate over what we just saw to the Extensions Template Manager, go to the Styles tab, and the Styles thing is displayed in the list. Go back to your ProStar Copy default, so I've already done that. All right, it says you're taken to the Edit Style screen. Click on the Options tab to reveal the Advanced Options panel. And again, this isn't exactly the way that ours looks. So again, when I come back in here, all right, and we come back and we go to the ProStar Copy default, which is what we wanted, all right, and I come onto here, this is what they're talking about. So notice we've got advanced and menu assignments, which is not, I believe, the exact same things that they're showing here. Here they have details, options, and menu assignment. So usually the same information is there, but sometimes you got to dig through it. Sometimes the name is the same, and sometimes they've changed the name. All right. I know that makes it a little bit of a pain. Again, it's funny because I did get a hold of PACT. I think I told you this. I sent them an email, then a follow-up email asking could I please have a copy of their newest book. I'm using it for a class now. They just never responded to my email. All right. And I will tell you that I know that a lot of you went through your own headaches and heartaches as far as getting the book. Talking to the woman who runs our bookstore here, I went in and talked with her twice, and she said, when I talked to them on the phone, she said they're a very small Canadian company. They're very nice people, but they tell you they will do something, and then they just don't do it. She said they don't get back to me when they say they'll get back to me. They say they'll send these, they don't send them, and she was maybe not as frustrated as those of you who wanted the book and couldn't get it were, but she was frustrated. All right, it's not that the bookstore here didn't try to see what they could do. Okay. All right, so when we look at some of the things that are here, notice again the color. So you can go and you can change stuff right here. So if you decided that it was pretty close to what you wanted, but not exactly what you wanted, all right, and I think we've talked about these in other classes. My hope is at least we have, but just in case we haven't, you all know about different color pickers and things like colorpicker.com, correct? Where you can go in there and you can pick out a color, and when you do, you can have the color basically shown to you right there. So in other words, bless you, if you didn't like, if you didn't like the different colors that are shown there, you could pick out your own. Then you could come back in here and you could change these accordingly. All right, either the background color or whatever. All right, and that's to me that's the best way to learn this stuff, is to just go in there and start making changes. All right. All right. Also, they talk about the fonts that are in here. They have you play with this. And notice it says Google font for headings. All right. Google has literally thousands of free fonts, all right, that are out there. And and there are ways to set it up too, so that if the person using your site doesn't have it, you can provide it for them very simply. You can also go in and use the standard fonts. You can use an Arial or a sans serif or a serif or a Helvetica or whatever. All right. So there's different things that you can use. But again, what they talk about in here is they go in and they have you, it says, click on the select for the palette pop-up, do the same for the background color. The background color by default is light gray. They change it to white. And you can immediately see just a marked difference in there. All right. And then they go through there and they have you do the same thing with the font. They have you choose a bitter, I think it's bitter font. Yeah, bitter. All right. And they talk about the difference then when you do it between what the Hideous Still Lifes and the Corba magazine Looking for Authors looks like there and here. All right. And again, do I expect you to go and do some of this for the site you're creating? Yes, I do. Not for the Corba one. I could care less. You can use all the defaults. But the thing that's nice about the Corba, that's a good chance to practice. All right. I will say that I've seen a lot of sites, whether they be Joomla sites or others, that are really well done, and a lot of other ones that when people use really weird colors or really weird fonts, they look like garbage, in my opinion. But as they say, that's why beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And to a lot of people, when they use script fonts and whatever, so it almost looks like you're writing, a lot of people like that. And with some sites, it looks very professional and very nice. With other ones, I wouldn't recommend doing it. But again, it's your site. If Teresa goes and uses a color scheme that I wouldn't use, but it's one that she wants and that she likes, I would not take off a bit for something like that. All right. But I will expect you that you will go in and look at some of this stuff as the stuff that's discussed there, and look at it, play with it a little bit. All right. And there's a difference between playing with it a little bit and saying, okay, I'm just going to grab the first color that's not in there. All right, just use that. All right. Hopefully, again, the site is a reflection of you. So as they say here on page 324, the author mentions using the built-in template options allows you to change things like color and font. Every template has its own specific set of options, which again, you can override. All right. And the author talks about changing the site logo, and the only thing that I do want to mention about that is if you do that, and that's fine for the Corba one, he's actually got two different logos in there. He's got one that's very plain. It's got the Corba in there, the one that we've been using with the 3 little rectangles or whatever. He's got another one that I think didn't even have the rectangles. It's got a bigger, bolder font, and it's got a lot more shadowing and stuff on it. I could care less which one you use. Again, if you want to go back like I did, and mine isn't very nice really, but if you want to go back and you want to go back in and use your own, like I did here, that's fine too. All right. Next then on 324, changing to a different template, as he says. Up to now we've worked with ProStar, the default template. So this is where he has you go in and look at the Bees 3 and some of the other ones, or the Hathor or Hather, I don't know how it's pronounced. All right. So, am I right in assuming, and I know some of you more than others, but am I right in assuming that everybody in here has at least heard of Bootstrap? Is that a fair assumption to make? All right. What I'm doing with the 157 class this semester. All right. What we've done is we're using 2 different books. I'm going to give you an aside here for 5 minutes, but I think it's literally worth talking about. These are the 2 books that I'm using with them: HTML5 Foundations and CSS3 Foundations. What we did was, first, with the HTML5 Foundations, there are, I think, 14 chapters in that book. We've gone through the first 9 already. All right? And we're going to go into chapter 10, which is on JavaScript. We're going to go into that in the next class. All right? With the CSS3, there's about 16 chapters in that book, and we've gone through about the first 5 or 6. So we did that. There was a lot of lecture. We literally went and built a very simple site with just a couple pages in it, only 1 page which was operational. And now they're creating their own site. Okay? And in order to do that, what we did, and this is the reason I'm showing you this, what we did was we went out to html5boilerplate.com, another site. I don't know if you've heard of that site or not. All right? So we went there, and rather than downloading all of it, which has had a lot of stuff we didn't need, we went to click get a custom build, and we went down there, and this will set up default templates for you. Either a classic, which is the one we used, HTML5 boilerplate template, or a responsive template, and they show you a demo of it. So notice that as you go and you shrink it down, it stays responsive. See how the stuff up here is shrinking, etc. All right. So we looked at that a little bit. I want that back. And the other one in here is Bootstrap. Well, if you look at the demo for Bootstrap, this is kind of what it looks like. And you'll notice that it's got some stuff in here, and it's got, for instance, the buttons can be different colors, and it's all set up like that. So this is a basic Bootstrap type of setup. All right. So what we did was we went down and we chose the classic one here. And we said we wanted no template. All right. So we didn't want any, we're going to build it ourselves, basically. We wanted Modernizer. If you don't know what Modernizer is, it's a tool that you can use that'll go out and check whether or not the browser you're using supports different HTML5 and CSS3 features. All right. If you don't want to use that, you can use the HTML5 shiv, which is something that some developer set up so that if you're running an older version of a browser and you get into this HTML5 code that it doesn't understand, it basically says to ignore it. All right. We brought in the minified jQuery and all this other stuff that was in here. We didn't even really talk much about it. We just said we don't want any of it. All right, so none of that stuff, minified jQuery, Modernizer, no template, HTML5 boilerplate. All right, and then we downloaded it. When we did, we saved it. All right, and it created this for us. Initializer, Verakia or something like that. I don't know, don't really care. Then we open that up, cut that, pasted it back to our desktop, extracted it, and the reason I'm showing you all this, and again, not to waste my time or your time, but what that did was it created a simple template for us, which has a CSS file, a couple CSS files in it, a main one, which right now has got some predefined stuff set up, but it's got a big area in there for you to set up your own stuff and to set up your own media queries, etc. But it's a start. All right. It also has in here a file that's called normalize, and that file is kind of the newer version of a CSS reset. So it sets that up for you also. All right. And it's got a JS directory that's got in here vendor, and vendor, that's got the jQuery and the modernizer that I chose. All right. And it's got main, which right now is an empty JavaScript file. That's where you put most of your code. And it's got an image folder that's empty. And right now, if you open this up, all right, that's all that's in it. And literally all that you see here is hello world, this is an HTML5 boilerplate. That's it. But I asked them to start with that because that way what they have is they have their meta tags, the standard ones set up. They've got their links to their CSS files. They've got their links to their jQuery file. They've got their, their links to their modernizer file, etc. So that stuff's in there. So what they did, what their first assignment was, and again, we built a simple site as a class, was to pick, I said, pick your passion, find out something that you're interested in, all right, and start to build a site based off of that. And the site had to have a minimum of 3 pages in it, an opening page, an about page, and a contact page. And in the contact page, they had to put in an HTML5 form, have it validate, and have it use some simple regular expression pattern handling. Then what we're going to do is we're going over some JavaScript now. And what we're going to end up doing, just to show you this, some of it is stuff I've built kind of with you or that you've seen too, but I'll show you because I've been working on it myself. So I gotta find it. I think it's here, but we're going to find out. So what we built first was, we literally call this is one we built in class, my HTML website about HTML. So this page was operational, the first page. The about page, I gave them this, but they didn't have to even put it in. And the features, this was all stuff about HTML5. And then we went over a simple contact form as a class. All right, now we're going to come in there with JavaScript, and I've got that, but I thought I had it on. Oh, there it is. And we're going to have like a simple guessing game, so I can show them some more advanced JavaScript stuff. So notice what happens in here. If I put in 23 and I submit my guess, it says I haven't guessed a random number yet, but notice what will happen is, all right, it's not working, but generate the number there, it's 11. So I come in here now and say 23, and I guess it says it's too high. What's supposed to happen is there. See how it, all right, so I'm going to give them the code for this, and we're going to go over this as a class, the JavaScript code, so they can see how it works. I thought that would bring it up, but it didn't. All right, and I did the simple astrology thing where you can put in when you were born. So if you were born today, so if it's September 30th, all right, that, what's your sign, and you're a Capricorn, and it's got the information. Notice you could say, yeah, but what about if you put in, what if you put in a date that wasn't valid, like September 31st? All right, it doesn't take it. So it's simple, but we're going to do that. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to have them go back and add a JavaScript page or two to their site. Then when we get done with that, we're still going to have 5 or 6 weeks left in the semester. We're going to go back, and the original site that we built here, we're going to go back and rebuild it using Bootstrap. So then they've had experience using the HTML5 boilerplate, and they've had experience using Bootstrap. What I'm thinking of doing with you guys in the 164 class next semester is at least giving you some Bootstrap so you can see it. I think it'd be worth your time, and a lot of sites get started that way. And Bootstrap is very powerful. It was, what is it, the Twitter people, I think, that created it. It's either the Twitter or the MySpace, but I think it's the Twitter. Okay, and it allows you to do a lot of different stuff. All right, I played with it, not as much as I wish I had time to do. All right. Sorry for that aside, which was supposed to be a minute or two, but was a lot longer than that. Well, and this is the thing. What I'm supposed to do, and this is, pardon my French, but this is what pisses me off like to no end. I'm supposed to do all this work, and then somebody else is supposed to teach it. I'm supposed to just give them everything that I've done and say, here, go run with it. You don't have to do anything. Just take everything I've done. And I'm really, really getting frickin' sick of doing this. Because this is what I've been doing for 15 years here. No, but even with Doug. But to Doug's benefit, because he showed me, that SOB, he typed in over 100 programs on his own. He typed in all the stuff that was in the book to get it to work. So I don't have a problem working with somebody like that. I have a problem working with somebody who says, well, I don't have time to do this. Would you just give me what you did? Yeah, because that's how life works. Okay, end of my sermon. So these are the templates, again, that come with Joomla. You've already seen all of them now. We've been working all semester with ProStar, albeit a copy of it, and we've been working all semester with ICES. It's going to be interesting to see when they come up with the next version of Joomla if they consider changing the name of the ICES template. You know, seriously, you know, you start thinking about stuff like that when you're talking about marketing. Even if they just changed it to ISAS or something like that that made it similar, but who knows? All right. So you saw this when we did it. You know, we looked at the template. Okay. So I guess I did the second one first. This is what they wanted you to do, was the Bees 3 thing, and I've already gone through that with you. All right. And this is what they say. They have you come in then and change the background color. And you'll notice when you change the background color, or the template color rather, they change it to turquoise. All right, you can see immediately what changes. Well, the important thing is if you're going to change that, there's a good chance that you're going to have to go in and change the actual font color also. All right, and that's pretty much what the author gets into here. You'll notice, just like with mine, that the stuff moved over from the stuff here moved over from position 7 to position 3. All right. So same content, different design. By setting a new default template, you've given the site a completely new look. That's what this is. That's what this is about. To me, at least, that's what this author has done in this book. And again, I'm going to be really interested, and I'm saying this in all sincerity. So please, in 2 weeks from now is the 9th week. I have to have grades in. So if nothing else, even if you don't have yours done by then, at least I'd like to walk around by everybody and look at what you've done. Even if I stand there for 5 minutes and have you go through it. All right, then I can give you the S and we can all move on in life. All right, but when you do I'm going to leave here for 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to ask you, when one of the periods, just go ahead and do your evals. If you want to do them, if you got me for 4 or 5 classes, you want to do all of them, then do all of them. I'll leave for a half an hour. I don't care, but I want you to do them. And if there's comments that you want to make, good or bad, about me, about somebody else who's teaching classes, whatever it is. Again, in all seriousness, don't sit there and say to me, you know, I got problems with my gen ed teacher. You know, she sucks, he sucks. We're not going to be able to change that kind of stuff. But if there's somebody that you have for another teacher here, even if it's me, and you say, no, you shouldn't be teaching this, then write that down. All right. Again, next, starting on 329, this is that applying changes to individual pages. This is where they have you come in, and when you get done, you've got that. They have you change just the main page to give it a red background here, and basically, for lack of better words, they remove the logo. All right. So the idea, again, is what the author talks about here is, is applying template styles to individual pages. And I would think, at least if you're going to do that, that probably the one page, if you were going to just do it to one, it would be the default page. All right. Some people really like to have glitz or whatever or something on their default page. And again, as always, it depends on what you're talking about. My kids have started, they found all these different online sites where you can buy clothes. All right, which is really a terrible thing. I wish they would find those in January, not in September when Christmas is coming up. I wish they would have found them in January. But they're like, Dad, look at this. If you buy $200 worth of stuff, you get free shipping. Yeah, right. Okay. But the point is, their homepage is real glitzy on one of these sites that I can't remember the name of it, but they went out to. It's real glitzy. But when you go out to their individual pages, not so much so. But they're trying to bring you in, so there's a lot of color, there's a lot of good-looking models, male and female, on the page, showing a lot of their clothes. All right. So as it says, first we'll make a dummy page and a menu link that points to it, so you don't have to worry about that. So go to the template manager then to access the template manager styles. We looked at this a little bit. As it says, use the Bees 3 template you've just assigned as the default template. Create a copy of it, so you choose Bees 3 default and work with that. Then come in, this is the stuff we just looked at, and they have you come in here and make some changes. The page they showed before was the details page, now it's the options page. All right, notice they've changed the site title, the navigation, etc. So they're really changing it around. The big thing is down here when they change the template color. All right, and you get that when you get done. All right. Again, did they make it better? Did they make it worse? As I mentioned to you before, I believe the author did this for effect. Okay. So then he goes through and he talks about downloading and installing a new template. So again, remember that when you're in here and you're working and you go into, let's just, we'll do that's fine, we'll save. Save and close in effect. So when you go in here to Extensions Template Manager, it's not like you got a boatload of choices. All right? But this is meant to be a very extensible type of package where you can go out there and either add from, you know, go out to the Joomla site basically, or go out to third-party vendors. And there are also places, you probably know this already, I wouldn't expect this, I don't want you to do this. All right, I'm sure that you could actually go out to sites that people will make these things for you for a fee. All right. It's interesting because in the thing I was telling you about with the people in the 157 class, I've got a woman in the class that, I don't know if you guys, if you saw this, but Mercy Joy, who sits over there, she's got a company that does stuff with honey. So she's got all these logos with bees on them, and she's using that. And she had to call me over yesterday to show me and say, I didn't copy these. We had these made for us, you know, etc. But I like that. She said, I hope that's okay. I like it when I'm giving people an idea of what to do. But if you can work on a site, Ben LaPaz, who sits where Mark is, he's working on a site for a friend of his. And he says, so I'm doing the stuff you're talking about, but I'm doing it in a totally different way. Good. That's what I want. He said, well, I might even be able to work an internship out of this. Even better. All right, because this woman wants me to create a whole new site for her and then do this. Good. All right. That's what this, to me, that's what this program should be about, is you doing stuff like that. So as it says here, they have you come on over to here, the icetheme.com downloads. All right. And I believe this was a free one, and I believe there was no registering or anything else that had to be done for this. I could be wrong, but that's what I thought. It's still thinking about it. Okay. All right. So your Joomla, yeah. So somewhere in here, contact, well, there's the demo. Let's just take a quick look at that. That'll be better than anything I could create anyway. And as you come working, well, again, notice what they have here. This may not have been the best one to choose because it's a real estate thing. All right. Slideshow, you can see the stuff sliding in and out, etc. To me, that's a little dramatic. I don't mind the houses so much, but when I saw the people doing that, and I went to another page, that to me was a little weird, but hey, whatever. Again, there are all sorts of free add-ons that are in here. So you can go as nuts as you want to go with this. All right. And if you say, well, I don't have a lot of time, you know, if you spend a day doing something like this, and when I say a day, I don't mean 24 hours, but you spend a class period in here or a week in here, you should be able to come up with something that's pretty darn good. Again, my hope is that come spring, when as I told you before in the 164 class, the Design and Implementation Projects class, that in that class, when you come up here and you've got 10 minutes to sit there and sell your wares, so to speak, that whatever project you created for this class, that'll be one of the things you'll show. Say, hey, at the beginning of the semester, you know, I didn't know anything about Joomla, and not really, our instructor didn't know much more than I did, but at the end of the class, this is what I created. All right, we worked on a project for about half the class, and this is what I did. Right, you never know if one of the people that are in there, that if you know, one of the guys from Foremost, I'm really going to try to get John Ballard, whom I know is the president of Foremost, Andy Walker, who's their lead programmer, and maybe even Tony to come back, maybe even Derek Hancock, who was here, graduated from here a couple years ago. He's the guy who was working on the site Mike's working on now for Strength and Fitness. I'd like to get those 4 people in here. And if they're doing anything or plan on doing something with Joomla, well, now they've seen examples of somebody who's used it, and hopefully at least looks like they know what they're doing. All right, right, so it says click the download button, navigate over to the zip file on your computer and unzip it. Notice as it says, the zip file contains several other zip files because the way that it's set up, it's what do you need? All right, so you can kind of download it incrementally as far as what you need. So it says the template, the installation guide, and several free extensions that come with the template. All right, it says after you've decompressed the zip file, notice what you have. You still have 1, 2, 3, 4 other zip files and a file that's fairly big with an installation guide. All right. Now, sometimes it's worth grabbing that installation guide, at least opening it up. I wouldn't print it out, of course. That's going to be way too big. But going through it, because sometimes not only do they have installation, but they have some hints. You know, they might give you links to other sites that use it, etc. As it says, after you've uncompressed the main zip file, you should also unzip the following. As they've shown there, it says the Ice Mega main unzip first and the Ice Carousel unzip first. It says you can ignore the clone installer zip file. All right, it's only used to create a full copy of the demo site. All right, and again, if you're not sure what to zip or what to unzip, I'd go and take a look in the installation guide because most of them should have one, and most of them, ideally at least, should explain to you what it's supposed to be doing. All right. Okay, then they say navigate over to it, click Browse and Install. To activate the new template, go to the Extension Manager, so that should have done it. Now, you might look at this and say it hasn't changed much. All right. You can already tell by looking at it, for example, the background color has changed. All right, because it's got the default background, and what's up here has changed a little bit. And it says right here, it isn't showing you the logo, etc. All right, but they mentioned you've just downloaded and activated a new template. Although the design is applied, you'll notice many elements don't show up. This is common when you step over to a new template. You often need to change your logo, change your module positions, and fix a couple of other settings. Again, this is the kind of thing that ideally, if you go in and you take a look and you have the PDF for the install file open also, it's going to help you as you're walking your way through it. So notice what they have you do. Again, go over to Extensions Template, open up the template, click on the Options tab, and start to play with some of the stuff. All right. It says it'll also include the possibility of adding Facebook and Twitter to the site. We won't add them, so you'll select no. But the nice thing is, what's nice about that? You select yes, boom, you've got it in there without any extra work on your part. And you see that, I think, at least on most sites today. I know that the site that Zane's working on for the Gifts homeless shelter, that's one of the first things they said. All right. It's funny. Have you guys seen that commercial? Like, I don't know if it's for AT&T or one of the other companies where they got the two guys who are real geeky, and they're both look like they could be of Indian ancestry, and now they're in a car on their latest commercial, and the one guy says that his selfie has reached 100 likes. My daughter just goes nuts. She loves that guy now, the geeky guy. She's like, oh, I love that. I watch it. I'm like trying to get the fascination, but I guess it's done what it's supposed to be doing. I don't know. All right. So the next thing that they have you do here is that did the first part, but now they have you do the Ice Mega menu. So when you get done, you have this. And you have that basically set up by default. But again, if all you've done is if you have nothing under home and nothing under news and nothing under activities, etc., nothing will show there. So what they have you doing here is add a bunch of dummy pages. All right, and just so you can see. And they also show you that you can sit there and you can set up radio buttons and a bunch of other stuff with this. All right, and again, like I said, even if you do it today, I would recommend going out to some of these sites that we'll see again in about 10 pages or so, and looking at them. Start to think, the thing is, what you're doing, whatever you decide to do for a project, that should drive the template that you choose. Do you understand what I'm saying? It shouldn't be that you go out and say, wow, what a frickin' cool template. And you download that and you use it, and it has nothing to do with the site that you want to work with. All right, it's just like people, the requirement should drive the design. You should never let the design drive the requirements, and it's the same kind of thing here. All right, as it says, the great thing about this menu is that it's responsive too. Most, not all, but most of the templates that you download will be responsive. All right, and again, when you say, I don't know what responsive is, well, I showed you, but not the way I wanted to show you. Remember when I had this, when I started making this bigger and smaller, that boom, you get to a certain point on here, and what happens? This becomes responsive. All right, so in other words, it is responsive. It is shrank down. All right, and as I make it smaller again, so it's always fitting the screen size. That's basically what responsive web design is. All right, in a nutshell. Okay. But I could very well see somebody coming in here, and Mark's up here and he's showing his wares, he's showing his project, and looks good if you can say, oh yeah, and it's responsive. All right, and you just show them that. That's all. So they have you come in here, and as it says, when you go into the advanced, the menu link for the ICE Mega, it's going to look a little different from some of the menu stuff we've looked at before because you're working with a different template. So as it shows here on 337, some of the stuff that you can set up. Again, you can set it up with radio buttons, etc., and a lot of other stuff. Okay. Then they have you place the modules in the new positions. We've looked at this a little bit before. This is on page 338 in your book. And notice the author says, again, to find out what module positions are available, go to Extensions, Template Manager, Templates, and click on the preview link for the ICE Future, and it should look something like this. The idea, though, is when you look at this, the key thing to remember is position 7 that's in ProStar might not be where position 7 is in ICE Mega Menu, or ICE Mega, or whatever the heck it is. Okay. ICE Future, yeah, thank you. But they say if you want to follow what they've done, they tell you where they think you should be setting stuff up. And then you get this. Again, you could make your own case and say, as they've gone through there, they made it look better, then it looked worse, then it looked better again, then it looked worse. I think this looks very acceptable right here. All right, again, you may or may not agree with that. All right, you could also come up with the idea and say, you know what, this is a museum of bad art. There's not enough bad art on their page. Because really, even the stuff on here, that's not terrible. This doesn't look bad, the stuff that's here. That really they should have, you know, and I did go out and Google bad art on Google Images, and there are some pictures out there that you can use if you wanted to do that. Again, that's a point of view, but I'm saying you might want some pictures of bad art. All right. All right. So it says you're almost done restyling the site. You've downloaded and installed a new template. You've changed a few settings. You made sure all the modules are displayed in the desired positions. When you go through this, if you decide I don't like what they did and you want to throw stuff in other places, you should do that. Or if you want to learn, you know, where they've got some of the stuff that, you know, use the positions they have here, but move some of the stuff that they have in one position that they show here, move that to where one of the other positions, you know, are here. And just play around with it. See what you like. Then next here on 340, as it says, go in there and change the page layout. And all they're mentioned in here is if you don't like it, just go in and play with some of the settings that are in here. That's all. All right. Then they've got several pages starting on page 341, which attempt to, in about 5 or 6 pages, to teach you CSS. Literally. The author comes through here and he says, you know, that's a simple selector that you'll find right there that'll take any H1 tag, make it red and bold, etc. And then they say, here's another example of a style rule, and they talk about a little bit about the period for a class and the pound sign for an ID, etc. But where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is starting here on the bottom of page 342. The author says, go to Extensions, Template Manager, on the left-hand side, click on Templates, go to ICE Futures, Details, and Files, and when you do, one of the things that you'll see there is the template CSS file. Now, we did this in an earlier chapter. You may or may not remember doing this, but we did. This is where you can go in and you can make dramatic changes by just changing things like background color, all right, text color, etc. So remember, just because you go and you go out to one of these sites that have all these free templates and you download it, doesn't mean that you're stuck with a color that it gave you. All right, and the last thing that gets discussed in the chapter, starting on page 344, I guess it's not exactly the last thing, but it bleeds into it. It says, analyzing Joomla CSS using web developer tools. All right, And what the author mentions in here is when you come out to your site and you bring it up, and I click, for example, so if I hit F12, all right, you know this already since I believe I'm in Firefox, so I brought up Firebug. So if I click on here, all right, and I go over to my CSS, etc., I can go through some of the settings that are in here. I can go to the inspector, for example. I can click in here, and I can find the different stuff that's been set. The nice thing about working in here is you can also change colors right in here if you want to. So if you've got something that's been set up with a color, you can change it in here if you want to, and you'll see an immediate effect. All right. So that's what he gets in. And again, you know this already, at least I think you do. But had I come in here using, instead of Firebug, had I come in here using something like Chrome Developer Tools and hit F12, I get the same thing. The settings are very similar. They're not identical to one another, but they're very similar. IE has got their own developer tools. I just have not been using IE for really basically for nothing. I looked a little bit at the Opera stuff, and it looks like, again, like it's very similar. All right. So they have you go in and do the inspect element, and they run you through an exercise here. And then again, they mention that when you do and you grab the logo, this is what you're going to see. So you can manually go in and change that color in there too if you want to. All right, and that's what the author talks about in here. And they give you some CSS tutorials, some stuff that you might want to look at here for Firebug, etc., and for Chrome Developer Tools, and then some CSS tutorials, including our old friend W3 Schools. And finally, they talk about backing up here on 346, backing up and restoring a customized template. As it says, editing a template directly in Joomla is great. Let's not even read this. Let's talk about this. If, what was it, ICE Future you said? If you're going to grab that template and you're going to make major changes to it, what the author says is just like we did with ProStar, go in and make an ICE Futures copy so you still have the original. So if you want to be able to go back and revert back to the original one the way it looked, you should be doing that. That said, I wouldn't recommend coming in there and making like 7 or 8 copies because it's just going to be very confusing to yourself. If you decide, no, I'm going to do that anyway, then at least come up with some kind of a structure that maybe has a date on it or something else, not just ICE Futures 1, ICE Futures 2, etc. I wouldn't do that. It's just going to be too confusing for you. All right, we already mentioned here, they're also, just so you know, the author will talk about that there are also things that you'll have to Google these, but that will offer you a template of a template, for lack of better words. In other words, it'll get you started. There'll be a bare bones type of thing where you can grab that, you can run with it. All right. So again, here's where you can go to get those the free new templates. All right. A couple things the author says. You probably won't want a template that's too complicated. Probably want one that's free. Ideally, you want one that's responsive, and make sure that you pick one that's for Joomla 3 at least, because a lot of times if you grab one that's for 2.5 or 1 or 1.5, it won't work unless the author has done an upgrade on it. All right, so again, this creating your own template. I haven't done much work with just asking you this. Sorry, I'm running a little bit over, but again, to me, this stuff is important enough to at least mention to you. I'm not even sure what PSD stands for. But have you ever seen what's called a wireframe, where somebody literally will go into a package like Photoshop and they will draw what a site is supposed to look like? That's where I envision eventually. That's where I envision the 157 class coming to. I'd like to get Photoshop or some kind of a free copy of it, have students literally sit there and draw stuff out and kind of just mock up something and then build a site off of that. That way we wouldn't all be doing the same practice site like the one that I showed you before. All right. But the author mentions here that if you're going to create your own template, start out by at least sketching something an overall design, then go into your design, etc. And he says if you want to do that, there are some resources that are out there, and these are the ones that he mentions. Building a basic Joomla 3.0 template using Bootstrap, some tutorials for making your own template. This is going to be some work. All right, do I expect you to do that? No. I mean, I could sit there and say all that stuff, but I realize that, especially if you're taking 5 classes with me, you already have enough work. All right? So as it says, using a template framework as a base for your own template. So there's some here that'll get you started if you want to use those. The only one of these I've looked at before, as it says, is I've gone out to already to the Joomla Shine and looked at that. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's out there. This is for their blog. But they've got a lot of really cool stuff that's out there. At least the last time I went out there, they did. All right. So that's it. What we'll do on Thursday is we'll finish up the book. It's a lot shorter chapter, and it's on search engine optimization tips. All right. So we'll do that, like I said, on Thursday.